Hi, my name is Ashleigh Patterson, and today I'm going to be talking to you about kidneys. How do they work and why do they fail? So just a little introduction to my project. I was interested in this because I've always been interested in the medical field, and kidneys are something that I've wanted to learn more about. I've always known a little bit of surface level information, but I really wanted to do a deep dive, and I know someone that is susceptible to kidney disease, so this was kind of a personal connection for me. So the basics. What are kidneys? They are two fist-sized organs, and in the human body they're located on either side of the spine below the rib cage, and they are shaped like beans, as you can see in this diagram. Now the functions of the kidneys. The kidneys play a very important role in the body, actually multiple important roles, as you will see here on this slide. Some of the functions they perform include removing waste and excess fluid from the body, that's their primary function, filtering the blood, they regulate the production of red blood cells, they produce vitamins that help control our growth. They regulate blood pressure with various hormones, and they help regulate the calcium and potassium levels within the body. So without our kidneys, a lot of important functions would be lost. And the kidneys are connected to a range of bodily systems. The urinary system is one. As we know, the waste that is filtered out of the blood by the kidneys is turned into urine, and that is how it is released from the body. And the kidneys are directly connected to the bladder via the ureters, and those are part of the urinary system. The kidneys are also connected to the circulatory system. After all, the kidneys' role, one of their main roles, is filtering the blood, and the heart pumps that oxygenated blood down to the kidneys to be filtered. And we have these renal arteries and veins that carry blood into the kidneys, which I'll discuss more later. Kidney function is also highly reliant upon sufficient blood pressure in the glomeruli, which is a part of the kidney that I'll discuss more later. So proper blood flow is a real necessity for kidney function, and obviously that is related to the circulatory system. And lastly, the kidneys produce renin, which is a hormone that helps regulate our blood pressure. Also, they are connected to the integumentary system, and the kidneys are connected to this system by performing vitamin D synthesis, where they turn vitamin D3 into an active form called calcitriol. Finally, the kidneys are tied into the endocrine system. They produce renin, as I mentioned before, controlling the blood pressure, and they also produce erythropoietin, which stimulates red blood cell production. Now for the anatomy of the kidney. As you can see, it's very complex. I'm not going to get into the super detail of this kidney, but there's a few areas that I'd like to highlight. First is the capsule, which covers the kidney, and it's very tough and fibrous. And there are two main internal areas, the cortex and the medulla. Now, one specific area we should pay attention to are the minor and major calyx, and this is where urine collects after the blood has been filtered. Also, as you can see on this diagram, we have the renal pelvis, and that funnels urine down into the ureter to be excreted from the body. Now I'm going to focus in on the main function of kidneys, which is filtering the blood. So you may be wondering, why are we even filtering our blood? Well, our body metabolizes what we consume, but some of those substances we can't use and some we cannot store, such as urea or creatinine. We also have excess building blocks from the food we consume, such as carbs or fats. Finally, we have electrolytes that we need to recycle and dispose of, such as sodium, potassium, and calcium. And a fun fact, our kidneys in the average adult filter 200 quarts of fluid every day, and about 2 of those are removed as urine. Now, if we're going to talk about filtering the blood, we need to talk about the building block, the basic unit of filtration, which is the nephron. Each kidney has about 1 million nephrons, and there are two main parts, as you can see on this diagram. We have the glomerulus and the tubule. The glomerulus is responsible for filtering the blood, and it's actually a tuft of modified blood capillaries, and these capillaries have small pores inside the walls, which I'll discuss further later, but this is what filters out the blood. And it's covered in a capsule called Bowman's capsule. Then we have the tubule, and this returns substances to the blood, removes waste, and it can add or remove chemicals and water to make our final product that we're going to excrete from the body, which is urine. Now, how is the blood actually filtered? Well, first we need to get the blood into the kidney. So blood enters the kidney through the renal artery, as you can see circled on this slide. And that's just a large blood vessel, but then it branches off into smaller blood vessels until it reaches nephrons, which are those basic filtering units. Secondly, that pressurized blood enters the glomerulus, and it is important that this blood is pressurized. Now, how does the glomerulus actually filter the blood? And when I say filter, I'm discussing separating the plasma from the blood cells, and that plasma is that liquid part that has the solutes we're trying to filter out. Now, inside the glomerulus, there are 3 layers of the wall of these capillaries. Remember, the glomerulus is a cluster of modified capillaries. The 3 layers are the endothelium, the basement membrane, and the epithelium. The endothelium has large pores, and it lets solutes and plasma proteins and some fluid to pass through, but it does not let blood cells pass through. Remember, we want to retain the blood cells within the body. We also have the basement membrane, and it keeps those proteins from escaping because we want to retain our proteins. And finally, the epithelium has these podocyte cells, and they wrap around our capillaries, and they create these little slits called filtration slits, as you can see on this diagram. And that's the final filtration barrier. So as the fluid is pressurized and pumped through these barriers, we filter out what we don't want, we retain our blood cells that we want to keep and our proteins, and that fluid enters the glomerular space. And that is where the proteins and the blood cells are retained. Now, that filtered waste fluid enters the tubule, that second part of the nephron. And there are blood vessels that run along that tubule, and it reabsorbs the majority of the water because our body needs water and we want to retain the majority of that. It also reabsorbs any minerals we may need, and it removes excess acid. So finally, after passing through that tubule, the kidney and the nephron is left with our final fluid that is urine. And as I mentioned, those minor and major calyxes, that is where the urine collects within the kidney after being filtered by all these neurons, and then that is taken to the bladder by the ureters. Now what happens with the clean blood? Well, the clean blood re-enters the bloodstream, and that purified blood exits the kidneys through the renal vein, as you can see circled, and that re-enters the circulatory system. And this process happens over and over again, constantly in our body. Our blood is being filtered by the kidneys. Now moving on to why do kidneys fail? And when I say why do kidneys fail, I'm discussing chronic kidney disease, which is defined as a kidney abnormality and decreased kidney function for 3 months or more. Now, some of the causes can be diseases, diabetes, or high blood pressure. There's another condition called glomerulonephritis, and that is inflammation in the glomeruli, those filtering units. And it can be sudden, sometimes after an illness such as strep throat, which is sometimes temporary, but sometimes you do not regain full kidney function, or it can be slow developing, a progressive issue, and that impairs the ability of the glomeruli to filter. Another cause of kidney failure is reflux, and this can be very serious. This happens when the valve between the bladder and the ureter is not functioning properly, so the urine is able to flow back up the ureters and back into the kidneys. And as you can see in this diagram, the kidney on the right is very enlarged because all that urine is flowing back up. It causes infection in the kidneys, it can cause kidney failure, and it's often the cause of a congenital condition. Finally, drugs and toxins. Regular use of pain relievers can damage the blood vessels carrying blood, which can cause kidney tissue to die, and toxins, heroin, various drugs can impair kidney function and cause kidney failure. So what are some warning signs? Unfortunately, a lot of the signs are not displayed until late stages of kidney disease, but some signs are high blood pressure, if you see blood or urine, the blood or protein in your urine, and that can be found with an albumin to creatinine ratio test. Also swollen hands and feet, puffy eyes, difficulty urinating or more frequent urination, or an abnormal BUN test result, which measures waste buildup in the blood. If we see a high BUN, we may see an indication that something is going wrong in the kidneys. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something about kidneys, and have a great day.